In the late 1800s, the streets of New York City were not just paved with ambition. They were decorated with a level of opulence that defied logic. Imagine a dinner party where the guests of honor are not dignitaries or poets, but a group of well-dressed dogs sitting on velvet cushions and eating off silver platters. This actually happened during the height of the Gilded Age, an era where the American elite possessed fortunes so vast they had run out of practical things to buy. They were no longer purchasing comfort or survival. They were purchasing the envy of their peers. While the public looked on in a mix of awe and resentment, a tall, gaunt man with a drooping mustache was watching from the sidelines with a cold, analytical eye. His name was Thorstein Veblen, and he was about to dismantle the greatest lie in the history of economics. At the time, the world of finance and philosophy was dominated by the idea of the rational actor. Economists believed that humans were like walking calculators, always making choices that maximized their utility at the lowest possible cost. They assumed that if the price of a coat went up, people would buy fewer coats. But as Veblen walked through the bustling markets and peerage-obsessed social circles of the late 19th century, he saw the exact opposite. He saw people intentionally seeking out the most expensive items specifically because they were expensive. To Veblen, the human animal was not a cold calculator of utility, but a creature of deep-seated tribal instincts, driven by an ancient need to prove where they stood in the social hierarchy. This observation led him to write what would become one of the most influential books in social science, The Theory of the Leisure Class. Veblen realized that in the shift from primitive hunting societies to industrial capitalism, the way we displayed power had fundamentally changed. In the past, a chieftain might prove his dominance through physical prowess or the spoils of war. But in a modern, civilized world, the most effective way to show power was to prove that you didn't have to work at all. This was the birth of what he termed the leisure class, a group of people who used their wealth not just to live well, but to demonstrate their total exemption from productive labor. However, simply sitting around wasn't enough, because someone had to see you doing it. This is where Veblen's most famous concept enters the story: conspicuous consumption. It wasn't enough to be rich. You had to be seen wasting money. Waste was the ultimate proof of status. If you could spend thousands of dollars on a garment that was intentionally delicate and impractical, you were signaling to the world that you were far removed from the grimy, physical world of the working class. The more useless an object was, the more social value it possessed. This explains why, even today, we find ourselves drawn to items that are difficult to maintain or easily broken. They suggest that the owner has the resources to handle the loss. This hunger for status created a strange and powerful ripple effect throughout the entire economy. Veblen noticed that the habits of the ultra-wealthy didn't stay at the top. Instead, they filtered downward like a slow-moving poison. He called this pecuniary emulation. The middle class, looking up at the leisure class, began to imitate their spending habits to capture a shred of that perceived prestige. Even the poorest families would sacrifice essential needs just to own a single item that signaled they were not at the very bottom of the ladder. This drive turned the entire society into a giant competitive performance. As the Industrial Revolution accelerated, the nature of this performance shifted from what you did to what you owned. In a small village, everyone knew who was rich because they knew your family and your land. But in the anonymous, crowded streets of the modern city, nobody knew your name. You had to wear your bank account on your sleeve. This anonymity turbocharged the need for luxury goods. Your clothes, your carriage, and later your car became a portable identity card. The economy was no longer just a system for distributing goods and services. It had become a language of symbols. But this symbolic language came with a devastating price tag that we are still paying today. Veblen argued that this constant competition for status is a zero-sum game. When everyone is trying to outspend their neighbor to look superior, the baseline for what is considered normal simply keeps rising. This is the origin of lifestyle inflation. As incomes rose throughout the 20th century, people didn't find themselves feeling more secure or satisfied. Instead, they found that the cost of being respectable had increased. They needed more expensive houses, more prestigious educations for their children, and more high-end gadgets just to stay in the same social position. This psychological trap created a massive opening for the credit and debt industries. If you couldn't afford the lifestyle required to maintain your status, the banking system was more than happy to lend you the appearance of wealth. We transitioned from a society that saved for the future to a society that borrowed from the future to fund the present's vanity. Veblen's ghost haunts every modern credit card statement. He saw that when we buy things to impress people we don't even like, we aren't just losing money, we're losing our financial freedom. We become trapped in a cycle of working jobs we hate, to buy things we do and need to keep up a facade that everyone else is also struggling to maintain. The brilliance of Veblen was his ability to see that these behaviors weren't just personal failings, but built-in features of our institutions. He pointed out that the very way we value things is distorted by status. In a traditional market, a high price is a deterrent. But for a Veblen good, the high price is the primary attraction. If a luxury handbag were suddenly priced at $20, its sales would likely collapse because its primary function, signaling that the owner can afford to waste thousands of dollars, would be destroyed. The price tag is the product. This creates a market where companies are incentivized to make things more expensive, not more efficient. This diversion of capital has profound consequences for the world at large. Instead of wealth being invested in resilience, infrastructure, or genuine innovation that improves life for everyone, a massive portion of the global economy is dedicated to the production of status symbols. We build gleaming skyscrapers and luxury penthouses while the foundational systems of our society crumble, because the skyscrapers provide a more immediate signal of power. Veblen's work forces us to ask, how much of our global GDP is simply the cost of trying to feel better than someone else? As we move deeper into the digital age, the mechanisms of conspicuous consumption have only become more sophisticated. In Veblen's day, you had to walk down the street to see what the wealthy were doing. Today, the leisure class lives in our pockets. Social media has created a 24-hour global theater of status. We are constantly bombarded with curated images of the good life, creating a sense of relative deprivation that Veblen would have instantly recognized. The pressure to signal status has moved beyond physical goods and into the realm of experiences and digital assets. We don't just go on vacation. We document it to ensure the social credit is deposited into our digital accounts. This constant digital comparison has led to a rise in financial anxiety and a decline in genuine well-being. We are living in an era of quiet luxury and conspicuous leisure, where even the way we spend our free time is optimized for social signaling. We have become the managers of our own personal brands, obsessed with the optics of our lives, while the underlying reality is often one of debt and exhaustion. The rational consumer that early economists dreamed of has been replaced by the anxious performer. Yet, understanding Veblen's insights offers a potential path to escape. By recognizing that the urge to overspend is an inherited social instinct rather than a personal necessity, we can begin to decouple our self-worth from our net worth. We can start to see the luxury industry not as a provider of value, but as a tax on our need for validation. Veblen didn't just expose the rich, he exposed the architecture of the human ego and how it is exploited by the gears of commerce. The story of money is not just a story of coins, ledgers, and trade. It is a story of human psychology, of the desperate desire to belong and the even more desperate desire to stand out. Thorstein Veblen pulled back the curtain on the grand performance of modern life, showing us that beneath the gold leaf and the silk, we are still the same creatures trying to find our place in the tribe. As we look at our own bank accounts and our own desires, we have to wonder, are we buying for ourselves, or are we buying for the eyes of others? The answer to that question determines more than just our financial future. It defines our very freedom. In a world that profits from your insecurity, choosing to step off the treadmill of status is a radical act of rebellion. Veblen's legacy is a reminder that the most expensive things in life are often those that cost us our peace of mind. By understanding the history of how we were taught to want, we might finally learn how to be satisfied. Join us in the Money History Lab by subscribing for more stories behind the money.